In today's video, we will be continuing with part 3 of the PLP framework, which is lighting. We will cover the 4 categories of lighting inside Daz Studio and discuss 3 bonus lighting considerations to enhance the lighting of your renders. Hello everyone and welcome back to this channel. If you're new here, my name is Palmy and this YouTube channel is designed to help you master Daz Studio and help you to create the best renders. Now, lighting plays a core role in your renders. It is one of the things that you will have to learn, and especially if you were like me where you didn't understand anything about lighting, it's going to be very, very difficult at the beginning to really comprehend what lighting is and how it works and all the nuances regarding lighting. With practice and with progress, you can get amazing results when you focus on lighting in your renders. You can make the mundane render look absolutely amazing. So there was one incident back in 2019 which opened my eyes to lighting, which made me realize the importance of lighting in your renders. And it was this character here that I purchased all the way back in 2019. This HD character right here is the one I purchased all the way back in 2019 because it looks absolutely amazing. I purchased this character, I put this character inside Daz Studio with all the hair and everything like that and all the makeup like this. I hit the render button, it will look amazing like this. And it did not. It did not look anything like this. Why? Because this render here has got great lighting. It's got post work applied to it. So there's a lot of things happening in this render which I didn't understand. And that's absolutely fine if you started from here, where you started from zero noise of lighting. Don't worry, I'm going to guide you through that. That's what it's all about. So it's all about experience. It's all about progress. That's what it's all about. And the more you practice, the better you're going to get. And this here, what this render here is attainable. It is attainable and even more for you, especially if you're starting from zero like I was all the way back in 2018, 2019. You can attain this, and this framework, this lighting portion of the framework is going to help you. So we're back inside Daz Studio and we're going to be looking at the 4 categories of lighting. Let's go and let's dive into lighting and how each category of lighting affects your scene, and then you can decide which categories you want to use to light your scenes to make your render look absolutely freaking amazing. In order to see the 4 categories of lighting, we are missing the options right now. So in the render settings tab here, you'll notice there are 2 options missing, the tone mapper and the environment mode. It is the environment mode we need because that's where the 4 categories of lighting are for Daz Studio. And we're also missing them inside the scene tab here, the tone mapper node and the environment node as well. The easiest way to get these, if you just go to the IRA preview mode and you just turn it on, you'll notice they'll pop up on the right here, and you'll notice they're on the left here as well in the render settings tab. So that's the easiest way. Now, is there more than one way to do this? Of course there is. There always is inside Daz Studio. If you click on create menu here, you can always go into the environment mode options here, which will bring up this and this here, the environment here. And you can click on tone mapper here, which will bring the tone mapper options here, which will also bring it here as well. So choose a method that works for you there. So let's click on the environment option here in the render settings tab. And where it says environment mode, if I click on the options here, these are the 4 categories: dome and scene, dome only, sun sky, and scene only. So we're going to start off with dome only first. So I'm going to click on that. So before we light our scene with any of the 4 categories, what I want to do is make sure I'm going to go into render settings. I'm going to go into general, and here where it says auto headlamp, I do not want auto headlamp on whatsoever. So it says here auto headlamp, when there are no scene lights, the auto headlamp will be on. Do not want that because that is going to affect our lighting straight away. So you definitely want to click on that and you want to click never. You may want to make sure that is set to never. And what the auto headlamp is if you look at the camera here, I'm going to zoom out here. I'm going to go to perspective view. I'm going to click on my camera here. So let's just zoom here let's just move across here to the left. Auto headlamp means that this camera, there will basically be a spotlight coming from this angle. This camera will have its own like flashlight or light. That is going to affect our lighting. We don't want that whatsoever. So that's why you want to set this auto headlamp to never, because we want to make sure that the lighting is coming from our lights, from our dome only. We don't want anything interfering with our lighting. We want to control the lighting. That's very, very important. So highly recommend you set this setting here, auto headlamp, to never. and then you can go through the 4 categories of lighting and use the lighting that is going to make your scene look its best. So I'm going to go back to camera 1 because I just want my camera there. And now we can go back to the environment options here, and now we can talk about dome only. So I'm going to put on the iRay preview here and show you what that looks like. So what dome only is, it's using the HDRI map that comes with Daz Studio Free as its lighting source. So we're lighting our scene using this HDRI map. So I'm going to turn the dome on here, and you can see that scene here and how it's lighting our character. So at the moment, currently, the lighting is coming from the right hand side here. So the lighting is coming from here, somewhere on the right here, maybe slightly behind here as well. And you can tell that because of the shadows here. So I can see from the shadows are pointing this way, which means that the light is coming from this direction, somewhere from this direction. So we can control where the light comes from by using the dome rotation here. So as we move that around, you'll see the dome rotates. You'll also see the shadows move as well, giving you a clear indication of where that lighting is coming from, what direction that lighting is coming from. So that's really cool. We can do that, and you can see as we turn it, how it affects our character. So very, very important. I'm going to go all the way to show you where the light source is. So this is the light source that comes with this HDRI behind. You can see it's almost like a sun. And right now the light is behind our character. So that's why the shadows here at the bottom coming down here. So as we move it around, you can see how the lighting affects how our character looks, the shadows, the way it makes it look, the way it kind of defines the skin here and everything else associated with that. So that's the dome rotation to control the direction of the light source for the HDRI map. Now you're not limited to just using this HDRI map. You can input other HDRI maps that you've downloaded from different sources. So you can purchase them from the Daz 3D shop if you wish to do so. You can purchase them from Renderosity. You could purchase them from a number of sources. That's up to you to decide. There are some free websites that offer some amazing HDRI maps. So I will get to those websites as well. So hang around for that. I'm going to put the link in the description down below for that as well when I get to those. So the way we can change the HDRI map is we just click on the map there and we click on browse. So it normally takes you to the original location of the existing map, but that is not where my map is. So here they are. So I'm going to use the 2K version of this map first. So the 2K, so double click on that. There's my 2K version of my map. And now you can see it looks completely different. My lighting is different. The light source is different. And you can see everything here. And again, we can move the dome here and move it around, and you can choose where you like the lighting coming from. So maybe you like it something like this. You like the shadow here. You like the light from the left. Or you can move it around a little bit more and say, hey, I want these trees in the background. So that's the 2K version. Now you may have noticed there was an 8K version of the same map. So you can download 8K versions. Some of the HDRI maps do come with 16K versions and 24K versions as well. So let me go and load the 8K version to show you the difference. So notice here, before I load the 8K version of the same map, notice that the background here is very grainy, blurry, right? It's not very clear. Notice what happens when I add the 8K map. So let me go and add the 8K version of this map. I'm going to wait for that to load because it does have to take a while to load because it is a bigger map, right? It's a larger map. There's more data in there, more information. And straight away, you may have noticed that, look at the background. It's a lot more clear, a lot more clarity in the background. So now you could technically use this 8K map as a background for your render. Let's say you wanted it for a background for your render. You could do that. Of course, you put your character in there and then you can have the background, and you would use depth of field to integrate your character into this scene to make it look like they belong to this HDRI map here. They are physically in this scene right now. So you can use that to your advantage with the depth of field. So I can turn the dome rotation here, and again we can move it, and it will take a little bit of a while for my machine to kind of like catch up with it. So one caveat regarding using bigger size HDRI maps is that it will slow down Daz Studio depending on the amount of geometry you have in your scene. So at the moment I've only got my Genesis 2 male, but imagine if you had 2 characters, 3 characters, the latest Genesis 9 characters. They're very heavy with their textures. You've got a lot of fancy clothes on them. Maybe you've got some extra props in your scene, and then you decide to put in a 8K, 16K, maybe even 24K map, HDRI map into your scene. It's gonna slow it down. It may even crash Daz Studio. It's going to be very, very slow to move it around, especially like this when you got the IRA preview mode. Now, this obviously depends on your machine as well. If you got the latest GeForce graphics card, then that may not be an issue for you. But I know personally from my experience, if I go to 8K, 16K, and I have multiple characters in my scene and the geometry is really high in that scene, it's going to slow down and sometimes even crash in Daz Studio. So that is something to be mindful of. Those higher HDRI maps with the higher resolution, there is a possibility of Daz Studio crashing. Or Daz Studio becoming very unresponsive when you are moving the dome around, trying to get your scene the way you want to light it. Now, there are a few other things you can do with the HDRI maps, and that is control the brightness. So some of the HDRI maps that you will purchase are either too bright, or maybe they're not bright enough, or maybe you want to increase the brightness of that HDRI map. Yes, you can. The way to do that is the environment map here. At the moment, the limits are off. We can tell because this icon here will tell us the limits are off. So if I go to the parameter options here, the limits are off for this map here. So if I click on cancel, there you go. You can see how slow that was with the 8K map there. I was trying to click on cancel. It took a few times for the Daz Studio to see that I was trying to click on cancel. So that is I'm showing you right now, when you have a higher resolution HDRI map in your scene, it does slow things down inside Daz Studio. So back to controlling the lighting for a specific environment map. If you want to increase the lighting, yes, you can just change the value to a higher value. So the default is normally 2 for HDRI maps, the environment map. So if we go to 5, it's going to be very, very bright, as you can see here. Maybe you want that. Maybe you want to increase the brightness of the map you've got. That's fantastic. You can do that, or you can decrease it. So again, I can go to 0.5. I wanted to, and decrease that as well if you wanted to. If you've got a HDRI map that's way too bright, you just want to control that lighting, you can do that using this environment map setting here. So what I'm going to do is offer you some more tips and tricks to control the lighting, because there is limitations to HDRI maps, because remember, the lighting is baked into this HDRI map, which means we don't have 100% full control, but we do have some control. So we can control the angle of the lighting. So at the moment with the dome rotation, all we are doing is we are just rotating it on the y-axis, which means we're just going round, right? We're just going round. That's all we're doing. We can't control the angle of the lighting. We're only controlling the direction of the lighting, whether it's coming from the right-hand side or the left-hand side or behind or in front. That's what we're controlling with the dome rotation. If you want to control the angle of the lighting, so for example, if I wanted to control the angle, say I wanted it higher up, or I wanted it lower down, can we do that? Yes, we can. So the way we can do that is the dome orientation X here. So if I choose a value of something like 25, you'll notice that the dome starts to rotate as well. Not ideal if you want to use it as a background, but if you want to control the lighting, yes, you can do that. So you can see that the lighting is changing now. Not the way I want it to. So let's try negative values. Let's try negative 35, something like that for the dome rotation X here. Let's try negative 55, see what we're getting. And you can see it's starting to move now. The lighting is coming from a different angle. So it's coming from a different angle here. So that's the X. Again, experiment. It depends on your HDRI map, what kind of effects you'll get by changing the dome orientation X and the Z. So we're going to do that now as well. So let's choose a negative value for the Z. Let's choose 55, see what we get. Okay, we're not getting anything here. Why is that? Because the dome orientation Z here it can't get the lighting coming through from that. So obviously that's not going to work. That is a limitation of this HDRI map. I cannot go negative 55 for the dome orientation Z to get the lighting. So I'll have to go positive. So we can try something like positive 55. Let's try that. So you can see here, look at the lighting now. Maybe we can do something like 35 so we can see, or let's go even more crazy. Let's go 135. There we go. So you can see, obviously it's rotated the whole scene around now, which is why the lighting's coming like this. So it's coming from a different angle now. Highly recommend you experiment with this. It is a case of experimentation. Now let's say you didn't want the background, but I wanted the lighting. Yes, you could turn off the draw dome And that's it. And you can notice the lighting is different now. It's coming from behind. It's higher up. It's higher up. The angle is higher up now. You can tell that it's coming from the back. It's higher up. Because if you look at the lighting here, you'll notice that it's on the shoulders here, but you can't see here the chest, so it's coming from behind here. And you can see from the angle here, look at the angle of this here, of the shadow here, it's a lot more shorter, which means it's higher up. So we know that when the shadows are shorter, the lighting source is higher up. When the shadows are longer, the lighting source is lower down. So it's definitely lower down. It's like maybe coming down like this. So it's more like a lower angle here. Whereas if it was shorter, it's going to be higher up here. So that's how you can control the HDRI angle of the lighting with the HDRI. Again, experiment, so do experimentation, see what works for you with your particular HDRI maps that you decide to use for your scene. Now, one of the best pros of the HDRI maps is the rendering time. So the rendering time with a HDRI map is significantly faster, quicker than it would be if you're using any other light source. So if you're using a spotlight, if you're using a point light, if you were using ghost lights, those lights take time for Daz Studio to calculate the bounce, where the light's going in the particular scene that you're using. So it takes a while for it to do that. With HDRI maps, because the lighting is built into it, the rendering is going to be a lot faster. So if you're rendering like for like, let's say if you had a render of the scene with a HDRI map, and then you had a render of the same scene but with point lights or spotlights, and you did a side-by-side comparison, the HDRI rendering of that scene would be a lot quicker. So that is the biggest pro of using HDRI maps. And also the lighting. Some of the lighting you can get with HDRI maps, very realistic, make some of the skin on your character look absolutely amazing. It makes it pop. So again, experimentation, try different types of environment maps. You'll be very surprised with the results you get. Now, I did say I was going to share with you 3 websites, so let's go and do that right now, where you can get free HDRI maps. So the first one here, HDRImaps.com. You can get these free ones. These are all free here, so you can see there's like 0 value. These are all free. Try them out, download them, try them out. The next one here is going to be HDRI Haven. So you got different categories here. So let's say you just wanted outdoor HDRI maps. You got a multitude of different HDRI maps here. So let's say, hey, I like this foggy sunrise field. Let me click on that. And then here you've got even options for the different sizes. So it goes all the way from 1K all the way to 24K. Oh, 24K. It makes me shudder to think what that might do to Daz Studio for me. It might really slow down my Daz Studio, maybe even make it crash. And then we've got Polyhaven here, another resource. Again, you got categories here, so you can choose the categories. So let's say I wanted indoor lighting here, and I wanted kind of like natural lighting. So it gives me all those options here. And then these are all the natural lighting I could have for my indoor lighting scene if I wanted to do that for HDRI map. Again, you can click on one and you can choose what options you want here. So this one again goes to 24K. You can choose whatever options you want here again. So there's a lot of variety here. Again, these are great free resources. Links in the description down below. Go download them, go try them in your scenes and see what effects they have on your scene and how amazing your renders will look just by using HDRI lighting. Moving on to category number 2 of lighting inside Daz Studio, and that is the scene-only lights. There are 5 scene-only lights that work with iRay, and that are spotlights, emissive, point lights, distant lights, and ghost lights. So the first one we're going to look at is distant lights. So to create a distant light, we click on the create option here and we click on distant light, and then we click accept. If you want to dive a little bit deeper into distant lights, there is a video I did way back in 2019, which I'm going to put in the top right card here, which you can go to if you want to dive deeper, geek out a little bit. But for this tutorial, we're going to go through the basics. So if you want to geek out, this tutorial in the top right is for you. So back to this tutorial, when we insert the distant light, you'll see in the active viewport here, these arrows pop up. Now what these arrows are is the direction the light is coming from. So when I turn on the iRay preview, it's going to be very dark because the distant light is always on low setting. So let's increase the setting by going to parameters and light here. I'm making sure the distant light is obviously selected in my scene tab here. So where the luminous flux is, I'm just going to add a couple of zeros just to brighten it up. So let's add a couple of zeros. There we go. Cool. So let's go back to our distant light here because I want to control the lighting. So very similar to the way we could, with the dome rotation, change the direction the light is coming from. We can do that with the Y rotation here. So as we move that around, you'll see the lighting is turning and you can see the shadows forming here, showing you that the lighting is coming from this angle here, which is why we've got these shadows. If I wanted to change the angle, so the height, I can use the X rotation here. So here I can go like this. I can make it come at a higher angle, which means the shadows are going to be shorter. So I'm coming at a very high angle, very steep angle here, and my shadows here are shorter, which means this light source now is pretty high, probably like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, something like that, maybe 1 o'clock kind of angle here. And then obviously I can bring that down and the shadows will become longer as we come lower down with that angle of lighting. So that is essentially the basics of distant lighting. It is not the best method to light your scene because it's very limited in its control. Distant lights are not the best. There are other forms of lighting such as spotlights, which can give you the same effect and also give you a much greater control in terms of the shadow and where everything looks and how the lighting of the scene is. You can control a lot more with the spotlight. So again, distant light not recommended, but it is there if you feel like you want to use it for something. The next lighting method we're going to look at is spotlights for scene lights. So how do we get a spotlight? We go to create and we do new spotlight. So I'm just going to use the default settings for now, which means it's going to place the spotlight at the bottom here, as you can see. Now again, I've done a video on spotlights where we go into all of the details of spotlights, all the settings. So I'm not going to go through all the settings. The link is going to be in the top right here for spotlights, the card here. So if you want to geek out, dive in deeper, that's going to be for you. If you're a beginner, you should start there and then come back to this video here, because spotlights are one of the most powerful tools inside Daz Studio regarding lighting. There's a lot of control you have with spotlights and you can get amazing results once you understand how spotlights work and how you can use them for your scenes. So at the moment here, my spotlight here is at the bottom. I'm going to click here where my camera is and choose spotlight so I can move my spotlight around, so I'm in control of where I'm positioning my spotlight. So I have positioning control. I have a lot more control with my positioning compared to distant lights. Distant lights, there was limited positioning with that. With this, I have so much control. So I'm going to put it at an angle like this, just roughly at an angle. I mean, I could put it anywhere, but this is just for showing you what the spotlight is. I'm going to turn on the NVIDIA iRay here, and then I'm going to go back to my camera one to show you. So at the moment, again, the scene is very dark because the spotlight lumens on there are very low. So they always start off with a default of 1500 lumens. It's not enough. So I'm going to add a couple of zeros on the end of that. There we go. I might even add where it says the one. I think I might put a 5 there. That's too bright. Let's put that to 2 very quickly. There we go. Okay, so I've got my light set here. So let's go through some of these settings here for the spotlight. So in the parameters here with the spotlight, few settings. So you can choose the color of the light. Very straightforward. Again, just choose the color. You can go harsh if you want to go like a really harsh green. It'll be a very harsh green, or you can come down here where it's very small green light here, and you can see the difference here as well. So one of the things to note is when you are changing the color of your light, depending on the skin, you'll get a different kind of look for your character. So some characters, depending on the skin tone, when you put a specific color on there, they look absolutely amazing. You're like, wow, how did that happen? It's because of the way the colors are working off each other. So this one here, I've got green here. Let's say if I went to something like a bit more reddish here, it looks a lot more red here. It looks a lot more pinker, so to speak. So this is the color of your spotlight does have a big impact on how skin looks for your character. So take that under consideration. Be mindful of that. So even if I went to something like blue here, let's go to something like blue. You'll see it look how it makes the skin look. It makes it look like it's not tan. It looks very pale now. So you can see how the color plays an important role in your scene when you're using color here for your spotlight. So that's something to be very mindful of, how it changes the way skin or anything in your scene looks with color. Then we've got intensity. So intensity is another way of controlling the luminous flux. So what I normally like to do is just put the luminous flux at a pretty decent level, and then I control the intensity or the brightness of the spotlight using the intensity. So if I wanted to turn it down, I can just go to something like 50% and it will bring it down. If I wanted it brighter, and go to, for example, 150%, and I could do that. And again, there is a limit on this, so 200% is the limit here. So whatever you want, you can control it like that. So if you want something like 75, or maybe I want 125%, there you go. So that's another way of controlling it. The spread angle is basically the angle. So let me go back to the spotlight here. At the moment, the default spread angle is 60. If I increase the spread angle, it's going to make that light spread out more. So what does that mean? It means it's going to spread the light out more like this. So it's going to be less focused and more, it's going to go more out here. So it won't be as bright here where it was before in the middle. It will kind of spread out more. So let me show you what I mean by this. So the spread angle, if I just double it to 120, you will notice that it gets a lot darker, the scene, because our spread angle now, that light is being spread at a greater angle, which means that it's not as focused as it was before. That light is going into more of our scene. So that's why it's gone darker, which means you'll have to increase the luminous flux or the intensity in order to compensate for that spread angle. So that's something to note. We can do the opposite. We can decrease that spread angle. So let's bring it down to 30. And what happens now? The angle is smaller. So when I go to my spotlight now, you'll see that the angle is smaller now, which means that light now, 125%, is being focused now more in this smaller angle, which means that again, you would have to reduce the intensity in that case because you've made that angle smaller. So it's a way of controlling the light. Let's say you wanted the light in a specific section of a scene. You've got the scene and you want to control where you want that light to point. Then this is what the spread angle lets you do. It lets you control the spread of that particular light. Now, while we're here in this spotlight, I just want to explain about these two circles here. So the first circle here, this main one in the middle, this is the maximum power of what your light's going to be. Your maximum power will be inside here. Then as we get to the outer circle here, this is how it fades out. So as the light is the most maximum here in the middle, it will start fading out here. It will start fading out here as you go out, so it'll fall off. There is a fall off of light, and the more obviously it goes out here, the less the light will be. So again, it's showing you approximately where the light will be. So that's another way of knowing where to place your lights. You want to place your light in a certain scene, but you don't want it to go too far out. You want it to be a specific section. This helps you to navigate that and helps you to control the light where you would like it in your scene. So I'm just going to put that back normal. Beam exponent, when we increase that, so for example, the default is 4. If I double it to 8, what beam exponent does, it increases the light only in this center portion here. So this center portion here, this circle here, when you increase the beam exponent, this central bit, it would just get brighter. Everything else more or less stays the same. So the fall off is the same, everything else is the same. Just this center here is going to get extremely bright. So if I made it into something crazy like 20, you'll see that only this section here in the middle will get super bright. Everything else stays more or less the same. So that's what beam exponent does. It really makes the central part here super bright. It really focuses the light here. That's what beam exponent does there. Shadow type in my testing doesn't work for iRay. These settings don't work for iRay. These settings are only for 3D lights, so they don't work. If you have knowledge that this shadow type makes a difference for iRay, please let me know in the comments down below. Like I said, I'm always willing to learn. If you know that, hey, Palmy, you're wrong, the deep shadow map and this ray trace option here, when you turn it on, it really does add something to the shadows. You should use it. It works with iRay. From my testing, I believe it doesn't work, but if you know, if you have that knowledge, please share it in the comments. I love to learn, so that's going to help me make my renders better, as well as help other people who are watching this video to search it through the comments. They'll be like, oh, Palmy was wrong about that. Now we know that actually shadow type makes a difference, so we can use that when we are doing our lighting inside Daz Studio to really add that realism to our lighting inside Daz Studio. And then we get to light geometry. Now this is very important. Light geometry is very, very important. let's put the iRay preview back on here. Light geometry for your spotlight is going to change the way everything looks. So let me go to my camera here. So here is the current lighting we have with the point light geometry. Now point light geometry is, imagine it's like just very harsh lighting. You can't control the lighting. It's just a point light. It's just a big spotlight coming from the top and it's just pointing down at our character here. That's all it is. You can't control anything with the point light in terms of the softness of the lighting. So when we click on this, we have different options. We have rectangle, disc, sphere and cylinder. Depending on the geometry you use, you will get a different lighting effect. So for example, let's choose rectangle here. Let me get my perspective view here because I want to show you what that looks like. So let me point it at my camera. Right now, what you can see here, it's very, very vague here, is there is a rectangle here that's very, very small here. So let me increase that rectangle to something like 50 so you can see it. There we go. So it's 50 height, 50 width. That's what that rectangle is. So this is what we're using as our geometry to light our character. So now when I go back to my character here and go to camera 1 here, the lighting has changed. The lighting has become softer. These shadows have become softer. Everything has changed here. So let me go back to the original here, point light here. You'll notice that the shadows are harsher here. Notice that there is here back in the lighting, we're at the point light geometry here. These settings do not work for point light, so you're not getting the control here. So when we go and then click back onto rectangle here, you'll notice that you've got the rectangle here. We're controlling the lighting here. So go back to the camera. You see the shadows look a lot different and everything to do with lighting. So that's the power of geometry. If I changed it to something like disc now, so let me go back to spotlight, you'll notice, let me go back to the perspective view here. Here's the disc now. This is the disc. This is what is being used to control our light in terms of the geometry. It's not just a strong, harsh light. It's a disc light now, similar to like the sun, for example. And then we can choose and change it to sphere. So now it's a sphere, and then we can choose it to a cylinder if you wanted to as well. So now it's a cylinder here, literally a cylinder here, the shape of a cylinder. We go to the camera and you'll notice that the lighting looks very different here compared to the way it was with the point light. I just want to show you that obviously the geometry, the light geometry does affect the way your renders look and the different options of the diameter and the width you choose. So let me show you an example right now of some previous renders that I did before. So I believe it's here. So here we have an image of spotlight that I've done of a Genesis 9 character here. So we've got a spotlight image here with the point light here. We've got a spotlight with a rectangle, spotlight with a disc, sphere and cylinder. Now for the rectangle, disc, sphere and cylinder geometries for the spotlight, the diameters were the same. So the height and the width were the same. They were 50-50. And then for the point light, you can see the point light, it doesn't matter what geometry you use, it's always going to be that way. So there are very subtle differences when it comes to using rectangle, disc, sphere and cylinder. Very subtle differences depending on the angle you use the spotlight. So currently the angle this spotlight is coming from is from the right here at the top. Just to be mindful of that. So for example, if you look at the shadow here, look how sharp that shadow is here. It's like a straight line almost. There is no like softness to it. Whereas if you look at the rectangle geometry for the spotlight and the spotlight, the disc here and the sphere and the cylinder, you can see that it's a lot softer here. It's a lot softer here on the edge here. That's what we are doing with those geometries. We are controlling the softness of the lighting so it's not as harsh. So that's a very crude example here just to show you what it looks like. So again, experiment. You have to experiment. It's not a case of, hey, just use rectangle geometry and use 100 and 100 height and width. That's perfect for every scene. No, it's not. You need to experiment and that's what you need to do. So I'm just showing you how each is affected. Now, what you've just noticed here, what you may have noticed as I was going through the explanation, as I've increased the height and the width of the rectangle, you've noticed the light has diminished a bit. So it's come a bit, the light is not as strong as it used to be. So that's something you need to take into account. The more bigger you make this here, the lighting here will become less intense. When you experiment, you'll understand which light geometry works best for your scenes, and then you can use those and experiment and then make your scenes look absolutely amazing. So spotlights, definitely one of the main uses of lighting you will use inside Daz Studio to light your scenes. So the next scene lights we're going to be looking at are point lights and linear point lights. So let's go to create here and click on new point light and click on accept. So there is our point light there. So you'll notice that for the point light, when you click on it, the options are very, very similar to what spotlights had in terms of the options here. So the options are very, very similar. Again, I'm going to go through the basics with point light again. There is a video I did way back in 2019. Top right here, if you go to that tutorial, you can geek out and deep dive into the point light settings there. So let's do our iRay preview here. Go to my translation tool here and just move it up. That'll be easier. There we go. Then I'm gonna probably move it to the right a bit. There you go. So this is my point light here. So let's go back to my light here. In the parameter settings, let's increase the light again. Again, I'm just gonna add a couple of zeros. There we go. Awesome. So I'm just gonna move my light here a bit. That will do. Perfect. So a point light is basically like a light bulb. Very, very like crude example of a light bulb, meaning like the light is going to go out in all 360 degree angle. It's going to go in every single angle, which means the light is going out in that angle, that angle, that angle. It's doing a full 360 degree lighting of the scene. So that's what a point light is. Essentially, is you're just lighting the scene like a light bulb. So it's going in all angles. Whereas a spotlight was more controlled. You can define the control of that lighting. You can control exactly where that lighting went. With spotlights, there is limited control again. However, they are still a valuable tool when it comes to lighting inside your scenes. So again, you've got similar settings here. You've got color, you've got intensity, very similar to spotlights. They work exactly the same. So we can increase or decrease the intensity. Hey, that's too bright, or hey, that's not bright enough. You can use that to control the brightness. So let's go to 80, something like that. I'm going to skip shadow type because I believe they don't make a difference to point lights whatsoever. I don't think they work in iRay. I believe they only work in 3D light. Again, if I'm wrong, let me know down below. Like I said, I'm willing to learn all the time. If I'm wrong about something, or if you believe you've got knowledge that can help me or help others, put in the comments, help, because that's what it's all about. It's all about progress. It's all about helping everyone to move forward in their learning of Daz Studio, and all these little tips and tricks that you put in the comments are going to help someone to make their renders even better. And then light geometry, this is where the magic is. So again, we've got point light, which basically means we can't control the shadows of the particular light, the softness of the light. We can't control that with point light. So let me move this to rectangle, and you can see there's a small little rectangle there in the middle now. And I'm going to increase the diameter to something like 50, might be too big, but we can try that. 50 width, 50 height, there we go. So now you can see the difference between rectangle here. I've got back to point here. See the point light, how harsh that light is there. When I go to rectangle, you can see how it's more softer now, more diffused here. So even though it's kind of like still sharp here, you've got this softness coming through with the light here. What you'll notice with this one, there is a significant change when we change the geometry with point lights. So let me click on disk here. Very similar to rectangle geometry. When we go to sphere, very different. Do you see the way that changed? The sphere geometry here, the way that's changed, the lighting here, very soft now, as you can see. So what do I need to do? I'm gonna have to increase the intensity for that one. And then when I change it to cylinder, now, obviously the cylinder is too big here. Let me just shift that to the right there. You can see how different it is with the cylinder here. You can see the lighting here is a lot different. So I'll need to just move this up a bit so we can move. Let me just move that across. Move it higher up so you can see the difference. There you go. So you can see how the lighting effect is very different when you use point lights and you use the geometry for those point lights. It really does affect the way it looks. So that's something you need to consider. Your lighting can look absolutely amazing in a scene when you look at the different types of geometry for point lights, it really does make a very big difference. So let's just bump this up a bit. 125% intensity. That's something you definitely should consider with point lights. You can get some amazing effects with this. So let me show you an example right now that I've done some pre-renders again with the same Genesis 9 character with a point light, but using different geometry. So again, we've got the point light here, and it's got the point here geometry. We've got the rectangle geometry for the point light. We've got the disc geometry, the sphere, and the cylinder. And look at the difference here. The point light hasn't moved. The point light's in the same position for each of these renders. The only thing that has changed is the geometry. So you can see with the point light, we still got harsh shadows here with the point geometry. With the rectangle and the disc geometry, we have the softer shadows here. However, when we go to sphere now, look at the way that's changed. It's made this render a lot darker. Same with cylinder here. Because of the way the geometry of that point light now is diffusing the light, the way the light's coming out from there. So you can get some amazing effects with the sphere and the cylinder geometries with point lights. There's some amazing lighting you can get with these once you understand that. So there is a difference with that geometry. I do want to point that out. Definitely experiment with this. This is something that is going to enhance your renders a lot. You can see the difference in terms of the lighting here. So I will put these images, all these images I'm using, there will be a link in the description down below as well, which you can click on and download and have a look yourself to see all the nuances. Which one is ideal for your render in your specific scene you're creating right now today? Which one is going to give you the best lighting effect, and then select that option there. Now regarding linear point lights, which is when you go to create new linear point light, these linear point lights, from my knowledge, I believe that the linear point light here works exactly the same the way it does for point lights for iRay. But I know when you use the 3D light render engine, you get different options such as fall off and all these other options. If you know of anything different, again, in the comments, let me know, or let everybody else know in this video. Like, hey, actually, Palmy, linear point lights are not the same as point lights. They work slightly differently with iRay. You can do A, B, and C. Please share your knowledge in the comments. That's fantastic. Again, it's all about community. It's not just about me. You're helping the community to get better with Daz Studio, so you can help other people create better renders too. And that's what it's all about. This community is all about helping each other to get better, because progress is all that matters for you to go and create the best scenes inside Daz Studio. The next scene lights we're going to be looking at are emissive lights. Now, anything inside Daz Studio can be made emissive, which means that can become your light source. So for example, I'm going to go to create here. I'm going to go to new primitive, and I'm going to choose cube here. We'll choose a cube. We'll do accept here. So here is my cube. I'm going to click on my cube in the scene tab, and I'm going to go to surfaces here in my surfaces tab. I'm going to go to editor, make sure my cube is selected. I'm going to go to presets, shaders, iRay, emissives. Going to double click on this, and now this cube here is now my light source. So I'm just going to go and move this light source out of the way so it's not intersecting my Genesis 2 character there. And let's do a iRay preview. So here is the light coming from the cube. If I go to editor here and scroll down here into the iRay shader for the cube, you can see particular settings where we can control the light. Now there's limited control for the light, so you can control it using limited ways. So you can choose the color, you can choose the temperature, and you can choose emission profiles, which is to do with how you want the light to be affected by IES lights. And then you've got luminance here. So luminance is where we control the brightness of our emissive lights. So at the moment it's pretty low. So I just normally choose the K version, the 1000 version of the original here, which means it becomes very, very bright, which means I need to reduce the size to something like 100. Again, choose what light you want to choose, the unit of method of light you want to choose. There is no right or wrong. I'm not saying choose this one. I'm saying choose the method or the luminance lights you want to choose for your scene. I'm just showing you very, very briefly these. So every one of these settings are different. Again, if you go to the tutorial I've created using emissive lights, which the link is here on the top right card here, it goes into all those details. I'm not going to go into all those details. So if you want to geek out and have deeper dive of that, that is a tutorial for you, so check that out. Again, choose the luminance settings that is correct for your scene, and then you can choose the temperature here. I don't like the warm temperature, so I'm going to move it back to 6500, which is the default temperature. So here it is. This is our light source now, our cube, and as I move it up and down, you can see how it affects our render with the lighting here for this particular character here. So what else we could do with an emissive light is make anything in the scene emissive. So for example, if I choose my surface selection tool here and I click on the waistband here, I can make this waistband emissive. So because the waistband is selected here now, I go in my surfaces tab, I go to presets, use that emissive shader. You'll notice it's changed. Go back to editor here, scroll down to where those settings are, and again we can choose the light settings and we can change all these aspects here if I wanted to here. So if I turn off the cube lighting now, which is our main light, so this emissive here is lighting our scene, this waistband here is lighting our scene. So that is emissives. However, there are a couple of tips and tricks you can use, which is if we go back to emissive here, our emissive cube here, what you can do is you can control how the light looks like. So at the moment, if we go to cube, we go to parameters. If I make this scale, this cube, and make it smaller, say by 50%, and then I move it towards my character here, you can control the lighting that way. Now it's very, very subtle, very, very different. So you can control the lighting. So for example, at a scale of 50%, the lighting of this cube here is going to be a little bit brighter at that particular setting. Now, if I went to a bigger cube setting, bigger cube scale, so let's say if I went to 200%, notice as I move this out, we're getting much more of that lighting now coming from this. The bigger the lighting source, it's still softer lighting, but it's a bigger light source now. So it's filling in more of these shadows here. That's how we can kind of control it. It's very crude way to do it, but that is a way to control the lighting there with a primitive like that, which is your light source. So when you have a light source that is a sphere, a cylinder, a cone, try them out because you can get amazing results with that. Highly recommend you do that. The next scene lights we're going to move on to are ghost lights. Now, as of 4.2 of Daz Studio, ghost lights stopped working because NVIDIA, who created the iRay coding, fixed a loophole that was never meant to be, which means ghost lights were never meant to exist in Daz Studio. There was a loophole, there was a backdoor, for example, into the coding which allowed you to use ghost lights and allowed you to create these ghost lights, which means you could have lighting in your scene where lighting wouldn't exist. And obviously in real life, you don't have lighting just not coming out of anywhere. Lighting has to come from somewhere, a source, which means you need to have a light, for example, sunlight or a light bulb or something, even a light coming from your camera, which is lighting the scene. Ghost lights are never meant to exist inside Daz Studio, and there was a big hoo-ha. You go to the Daz Studio forums, there was a big hoo-ha about it, and ghost lights were broken. So this is why you'll see I'm using Daz Studio 4.15 Pro here. I didn't upgrade to the latest version of Daz Studio because I was creating my graphic novel at the time. I use ghost lights extensively in my scenes. So you can imagine there's over 700 panels, 700 plus renders, 750 plus renders that I've created for my graphic novel. If I move to the latest version of Daz Studio, which is 4.21.05, I believe, as of recording of this video, I would have to re-render all those scenes, and that is not what I want to do. So I haven't moved to the latest version of Daz Studio. Ghost lights, if you still got version 4.15 or 4.16, what ghost lights are essentially is you've got a primitive here and you can make it invisible. So you've got a primitive emissive light. We were talking about emissive lights previously. You can make it invisible by going to the surfaces tab, editor surface tab, where it says cutout opacity, and you could do 0.0001. And that made it invisible, which means that light now, even though it exists here, it should not be possible. If iRay was doing realistic lighting, that should not be possible. You should not be able to have a lighting source that is coming invisible like that, because there are advantages to using ghost lights in your scenes inside Daz Studio. This is one of the advantages where you can have a light source and you can create some amazing effects for your scenes inside Daz Studio. Because sometimes you have issues in your scenes where the spotlight doesn't work or the point lights, they're not giving the effect you want, but ghost lights will give you the effect that you want. That's ghost lights in 4.15 or 4.16 or any older versions. We're still exploiting that loophole inside the NVIDIA IRA there. However, there are some options Daz Studio are working towards, and there is a kind of like fix that they've implemented only for the public build, but you can also use this in the Daz Studio, latest version of Daz Studio stable build. So let me go into the public build and show you what that fix is. So here we are inside Daz Studio 4.21, the public build. These ghost light settings I'm going to share with you only work in the public build, and they kind of work in the stable version, the latest stable version of Daz Studio, which I believe is 4.21.05. They do kind of work. I'm going to show you a slight workaround using that as well. But I do want to thank WP Guru. Shout out to WP Guru. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to put the link in the video to where he talks about this fix here. I would not have known about this fix if I never went to his channel. So thank you very much for that. So I'm going to put the link in the top right card here. You can go and check out that video there where he discusses exactly what I'm going to talk about here. And he goes into a little bit more detail. So you can check out that video as well. Now, where you can get these ghost lights fixed is going to be in this website here. So this link here is going to be the link in the description down below, so you can go straight to it. And it shows you what you need to do in order to create the effect. So it gives you 3 different methods. It gives you method A, method B, and method C. So I'm going to just show you one of the methods. I'm not going to show you all 3. And this is currently only in the public build, like I said. So hopefully this will be integrated somehow into the next version of Daz Studio where you can do that. And once that is done, then I will consider moving to that version, because like I said before, I've already got ghost lights in my graphic novel, and if I need to go back to those scenes, then I'm kind of stuck on I can't go back and make sure that those scenes are lit correctly because ghost lights are broken in, or ghost lights don't work in the newer version of Daz Studio as they did in the older version. So the link in the description for this and all the links here, which are these links here, all these files here you can download. Let me go and show you how this works. So in my content library, I already saved the 2 files. So it's the IRA ghost factor, the light factor. You want to add that property and this one. So all you need to do is make sure it's the primitive, the emissive light selected. Then you got to double click that one, the IRA ghost light, and then the visible primary rays. Now nothing happens. Okay, it doesn't look like anything happens, but it does. But something has happened. When you go to the parameters here and you click on display for the sphere, or whatever your emissive light is, you'll notice a few extra options. IRA visible to primary rays. Yeah, you want to turn that to off. What happens with that one is it looks like it's a ghost light now. It looks like it's a ghost light back in the older version of Daz Studio. Not yet, because at the moment, the ghost light is still going to be visible to reflections. So if you have a reflective ground here, you're going to see the ghost light in the reflective ground. If you have a window or a mirror, you will see the ghost light reflection in there as well. We don't want that. So this is where the next kind of method comes in, which is the IRA ghost factor. You want to just choose a value higher than 1. So something small as 1.01, that is all you need. So something like that is going to help. And then what you need to do is go to the surfaces tab. You need to go for your emissive light, and you need to go to where it says refraction index, set that to 1. Refraction weight, set that to 1 as well. And now we have a ghost light that is exactly the way it used to be in the original version of Daz Studio before NVIDIA fixed the ghost light loophole. So yes, this is the current fix, which has been in the public build. So I have tested this with my scenes. I've taken a scene from my graphic novel, put it into the public build here, applied these settings, and they're exactly the same. I don't need to change the luminance. I don't need to change the cutout opacity. I don't need to do anything with all the crazy settings that Daz Studio YouTube channels have shown you. You don't need to do anything like that. This is as it was before. So this is making ghost lights as they were before in previous versions of Daz Studio. Now the other option is there is a vendor who's created a fix, a kind of fix for using ghost lights inside the stable version of Daz Studio, the new version of Daz Studio 4.21.05, which is this product here, IRA Ghost Light Kit 1. which allows you to have ghost lights inside Daz Studio 4.21, the stable version. Again, if you've got lighting though that's from 4.15 with ghost lights, it's still going to affect the way that lighting looks. So it's not a like for like. It's not a 100% fix where you can just take those settings that this gives you and apply it to your older renders into the newer version of Daz Studio. You're still going to have to change the luminance values, so you won't get the exact render that you did with the older version of Daz Studio. But this, if you're going forward, you want to use the latest version of Daz Studio with ghost lights, then yes, this is going to help you to do that, to achieve your goal. What if you've got the latest version of Daz Studio and you still want to use ghost lights, but you don't want to use the Ghost Light 1 kit? Well, your options are limited, but what you can do is still use this Add Eye Visible to Primary Rays property. This still works in the latest version of Daz Studio, the stable version. This Eye Ghost Factor property doesn't load. This does. So what you can do is you can turn off the Eye Visible to Primary Rays, which makes it look like a ghost light, and you can render it like that and it will still work. However, you will still get the reflections and you may get fireflies when you're rendering using that. So the option is to move your light source, your emissive light, out of the way of the camera, like move it further away. So you'd have to move it further away and then increase the light source like that. Now you can try that out because obviously that's out the way. Again, you'll still get the reflections though. If you've got reflective material at the bottom here or anywhere in your scene, you're still going to see that light source. So that is the latest up-to-date information regarding ghost lights. Hopefully that's helped you, whether you're going to move across to the next version of Daz Studio, the latest version, or whether you're staying to the older version of Daz Studio 4.15, 4.6, or even before that because you want the ghost lights. That's absolutely fine. Whatever works for you. I'm hoping that the Daz Studio programmers will implement this ghost light fix that's in the public build. They'll put it into this next stable build, and therefore a lot of people will be jumping onto that version, including myself, because I know that the lighting that I got for my older scenes are going to work exactly the same for ghost lights in the newer version, in that version of Daz Studios. Moving on to the third category of lighting, which is dome and scene. So we go to the render settings here. We go to environment mode and we click on dome and scene. Now what this allows you to do is it allows you to use any scene lights as well as the dome light, the HDRI light here, this HDRI light here, to light your scene. Any scene lights, point lights, spotlights, emissive lights, ghost lights, even distant lights if you wanted to light your scene. You can do that in conjunction with the HDRI. You can use it to, again, have more control. For example, I can change the color of this ghost light that I've got here right now. Maybe I can make it a bit more tint of blue perhaps. There we go. And then here, the environment map, I can control the lighting for this from here, the environment. So I can make it a little bit darker like that. So maybe that's too dark. 0.5 say. There you go, a little bit darker here. And then I could turn off the dome light here. So now I've got different kind of lighting. Whereas if I just went straight to scene only, where I've just got my ghost light here only, see how it changes the shadows here because I haven't got the HDRI light there. The HDRI light coming from the HDRI, it's missing, it's not filling in those gaps there. So I can go to dome and scene and use the environment map to fill in some of the gaps there and have this as more brighter if I wanted it to. So dome and scene, the only thing that does is it allows you to use the dome light and the scene lights for your particular scene. So sometimes you may want to use a HDRI for maybe you want lighting coming through a window and I want to use a HDRI map for that. So internal, the scene lights inside my building, I want to use specific scene lights. So I may want to use a ghost light, I may want to use a point light, I may want to use a spotlight, whatever you want to use. You've got that option there so you can use both there in that scene to give you the effect that you want. And then the fourth category of lighting inside Daz Studio is the sun sky. What the sun sky is basically, let me just put the draw dome on it. The sun sky is the sun inside Daz Studio. So it's very similar to like dome lighting, but instead we've got a single light source, which is the sun. So we are trying to simulate sunlight inside Daz Studio and we're using the sun sky environment mode to do that. There is a video I go into great detail of all these settings here that I've made a long time ago. So I'm going to put the link in the top right here, which you can go into decal and dive deeper into that That's definitely going to help you if you're brand new. Go into that, dive deep into that, and then come back to this one for the extra tips and tricks I'm going to teach you right now in this tutorial. So go and check that out, and then come back to this section here to get those extra tips and tricks. What we've got here, you've got the dome rotation here, so you can rotate it like we did with the HDRI. So we're just rotating it, and you can see the sun moving around here just like it would if it's just moving around. You can see the shadow as well. You can put the date here of where the sun is, so a particular time of year the sun will be higher in the sky, lower in the sky. You've got the time as well, so you can choose the time. So if we chose noon, for example, 12, you would see that the light's going to be higher up in the sky. In March, it's going to be roughly here. That simulates the lighting through there. One of the things I highly do recommend is where it says sRGB unit conversion, you want to change that to 0.318, which is a more accurate representation of sunlight inside Daz Studio. It's a more accurate representation of how it should be when sunlight is in your scene. Even though it's gone darker, we'll need to increase the SSS sun disk intensity, so we can just double it or we can triple it, whatever we need to do. But that is a more accurate representation of sunlight inside Daz Studio. So I recommend you use that setting whenever you're using the sun sky lighting method. So one of the great things about the sun sky is you can move the latitude and the longitude. So the latitude here, we can increase and decrease the shadow here. So you can see that we're moving the sun higher up in the sky and we're moving it lower down. You can see the shadow, so you can see how it's moving. And then you've got the longitude, which is almost like a rotation of that as well. So you can move the sun around. So here you can do a really, really cool effect. You can have the sun in the background here. So as we move this around, you can see there's the sun. There is the sun right there. And you can use the longitude and latitude here to move it up and down. So you like having a sunrise or sunset. So you can move it around like that. That is a really cool effect. So we're using the sunlight there. Obviously the sun's coming from behind here. And then you can change, for example, the sun disk scale. You can make it, let's make it a bit bigger. Right, you can make it a bit bigger so you're getting a bigger sun if you wanted it. And then you can bring that down so it starts to fade away. So we get this really soft like sun just rise coming up here. So there's a lot of cool things you do with the sun sky. There's a lot of more control with the sun sky, so you can use it to light your scenes any way you wish to do so. That's another method you can use to light your scenes. You get some extremely good lighting with that. That's a lot more realistic in terms of the sunlight compared to if you got a spotlight and then you choose the color of the spotlight. You won't always get the exact same color that you would get from a spotlight than you would from the sun sky. Sun sky, you'll get better colors from that regarding the sun. That's the sun sky there. The way I use it in my renders is I use it for when I'm doing a sun scene. I have the sunlight be very big, I have it be very strong, and then I have the sunlight coming through and getting those shadows, because I really do love the shadows when you got like the sun peeking through a building and then you have the shadow coming through of that building coming down onto the ground. It looks absolutely amazing, gives a great drama and effect to your renders. So that's sun sky there. Again, practice, experiment. It's all about practice and experiment. That's what it's all about there. So one of the things I need to mention about sun sky is none of the scene lights will work. So the point lights won't work, the spotlights won't work, the distant light won't work. The only thing that will work are emissive lights and ghost lights. So still, I've got my ghost light here, my sphere here. I turn it on and you'll see that the ghost light is on. So the ghost light is working. So you can use emissive lights and ghost lights inside for sun sky as well. So that's something you can consider as well, combining them together to get some sort of effect for your scene. That's something to consider as well when you are creating your renders and lighting your scenes. The next thing we're going to look at is the positioning of lighting. Now this is often overlooked and depends really on what you are creating in your scene. So where you want the lighting in your scene, what effect you're looking for. So it's not a case of where someone tells you, hey, just put the spotlight at the top right there and your render will look amazing. That's not going to work. So for example, if I said to you, this spotlight here, just move it up here, come back, and then take it at this angle here and move it somewhere like this, you'll get amazing renders, or your character will look amazing. No, it doesn't work like that. There's nobody that can tell you where, like, this specific scene, you gotta put the spotlight here, or the emissive light here, or the point light here, and you'll get amazing renders. You need to understand the underlying reason of why that spotlight or that specific scene light is in that particular position to give you a certain effect. For example, when you're doing portrait lighting, yes, there is a reason for using that 3-point light setup in order for you to get equal lighting, so you don't get any shadows on the face, so you can control the lighting, so you get some nice portrait lighting for your portraits. That's absolutely fine. There is a time and place for that positioning, but generally when you're creating a scene, especially when you're creating a graphic novel and you're gonna have lighting all over the place, it really is a case of experimentation. I will go into my scenes and I will put a light where I think it should go. So I will put a light where I think it should go, where I'm thinking like, okay, I know that I kind of like want my lighting to be at the top here, because I want the lighting to come from the top to make it look like it's coming from a street light or something like that. But I'm not getting the right effect. Okay, so let me try this with the same position, but with a different scene light. So let me try it with a ghost light. Let me try it with a emissive light. Let me try it with a point light to get that effect. And then I'll move it around. So it is a case of experimenting where you want to put the light to figure out where the positioning of particular lights need to go. It's all experimentation. And the more you practice, the better your experience will get in knowing where those lights need to go in certain situations. So that's what it comes down to. It comes down to experience when it comes to position of lighting. It's all about practicing that, and that's the only way you're going to get better. So there is no one way where someone says to you, put the light in the top right there or top left here and you'll get amazing light, fantastic lighting for your scene. No, it depends on your scene, and you need to practice that skill. And that is a skill that comes with time, and it comes with effort, it comes with energy, to practice that over and over again until you start to get a feel of where the lights need to be. So that's positioning of lighting very briefly. Depends on your scene, depends on a number of factors. And again, it's all to do with practice and making progress. That is the number one key of this channel. It's all about progress. It's not about where you are right now. It's about where you want to end up. And you need to practice. You need to make a lot of mistakes and learn from those mistakes, learn from those failures, and then that's where you will become better with your positioning of lighting and realize where things need to go. That's my take on positioning of lighting. I can't tell you exactly where you need to put the lighting. Nobody can. It's all a case of you understanding what lights you need to use, roughly where the position you think it needs to be because you understand lighting, and then working from there to putting that light in the right position in that scene so you can create the effect that you want to for your scene. So now we're going to move on to the bonus section regarding lighting. These are considerations to think about that's going to add to your lighting inside Daz Studio. So the first bonus lighting method we're going to talk about is soft and hard light. So what do we mean by soft and hard light? So what I'm going to do for this example is show you the sun sky here. I'm going to use the sun sky category or environment mode to show you my example. So soft light, for example, is light you would get in the real world when it's cloudy outside and the sun's coming through and you can barely see a shadow. That's soft light, where the shadows they're not harsh, they're very limited, so that's soft light. For sun sky, for example, the way I can do that is to make the sun disk scale bigger. So if I make it bigger, so if I make it to something like 100, that's soft light. This is soft light here. The shadow here at the bottom, barely visible. And then you've got the shadows here, you can barely see them as well. That's what soft light is, where the shadows are barely visible. So that's soft light. So soft light is used when you have your passport license, your driving license, even wedding photos. They are using soft light there because we don't want any harsh shadows. We want to have nice clear photos, nice clear images. And that's why you've got soft light there. Other examples of soft light is when you're creating female portraits. Generally, when you're creating female portraits, you would use soft light to enhance those female features there. You can also use it for portraits for male as well. So you can do that as well. But that's the general consensus of using soft light. And then hard light is exactly the opposite of soft light, where we've got harsh shadows like this. So this is hard light right here. We've got the shadows here. The sun's coming through. There is no clouds and the sun's coming through, or the light source is coming through. There is nothing stopping the light source from coming, nothing diffusing the light. So you've basically got the full light source coming at you, and that is hard light. So that's hard light. So this is hard light, for example, in some sky, and then obviously you can rotate that around, etc., etc. And that's hard light, an example of hard light there. So hard light, where would you use that? If you want to make some sort of dramatic scene, dramatic mood in your scene there, you can add the light to do that. For example, Batman uses this a lot in a lot of his Batman comics. You'll see the dramatic shadow of Batman, of his like silhouette coming onto the ground, or the lighting for the streets of Gotham and all the lights coming down, all those harsh shadows. That's what you'd use it for. So you use it for drama. You would use it for maybe someone who's like a nefarious person and you want to show the shadows hitting the person in a specific way. That's where you'll use that. So yes, you can use this in female lighting, in female portraits, and in male portraits if you want to do that, depending on your image you're creating. But that is softer and hard light in a very, very brief, concise basis right there when you're lighting inside Daz Studio. So the second bonus lighting to think about is color theory. Now, color theory can play a big role in your renders. Color is fantastic, especially when you're creating scenes such as cyberpunk scenes or anything relating to color. That's very, very important. It can really enhance your renders. Having a scene with generic lighting that we would think of is good, but obviously when you add color to it, it brings a different kind of tone, a different kind of mood to your scene, to your render, and that's something to consider as well when you are creating your lighting for your scene inside Daz Studio. So I'm going to share with you a great resource to help you with this. Link in the description down below for this. So this website here, Canva, it's free. You can go on there and it goes through and tells you about color theory, what all the color combinations mean, how it works, and how you can use that in your renders. So this is really great. So for example, if you were looking for complementary colors and you wanted to use a specific color, so let's say you wanted to use some sort of like a yellow color or maybe some sort of orange color, it tells you what kind of complementary color will go with orange or yellow or whatever you are choosing as your kind of like primary color. It shows you that blue is the complementary color in this case. If you were going to green, it tells you, well, green, it's going to be purple. So think about the Hulk. The Hulk, what color is he? He's green. What are his pants? What color are his pants? Purple. Complementary colors. Think about the Green Goblin. Green Goblin is green. What color is clothing? Purple. So that's complementary colors. There's a reason why those colors, those specific colors were chosen. You can go through here and it goes through, shows you everything, even monochromatic here. Shows you like the monochromatic. So if you wanted the same color but a slightly different type of hue saturation, you can choose a monochromatic there. And then you've got triadic here. So the three colors you've got here, just as a quick basic triadic colors. So blue, red, and green. So RGB, red, green, and blue, triadic colors. So if you want to have three colors in your scene, those are the three colors you would have in your scene that are going to work together in your scene as a combination. So this is a great resource. Use it to help you to enhance the lighting you use inside Daz Studio, to give your lighting the different colors and effects. That's really going to help your render stand out from everybody else's, because you're now taking it to the next level. You're using color theory to enhance your renders and make them even better. So the third bonus lighting to consider when you are creating your scene inside Daz Studio is spectral rendering. So spectral rendering can be found in the render settings tab and spectral setting here. In this version of Daz Studio 4.15, we have different options for spectral rendering, and in the latest version of Daz Studio, we have different options as well, which I'll go into as well. So stick with me here. So back in February 2020, I created a video regarding spectral rendering. It didn't do very well. It was very poorly made because I didn't understand about spectral rendering. However, we are 3 years on now. Let's see if I've learned a bit more. Let's see if I've made progress in my understanding of it, and let's see how this can help you when you're creating your renders and how it will enhance your renders to make sure you're getting the absolute best out of Daz Studio and getting that lighting effect as best as possible when you're creating your renders. So in Daz Studio 4.15 here, the older version, or if you got 4.16, spectral rendering here, we've only got two options here for spectral conversion intent, which is faithful and natural. And now these are the two algorithms that are going to do the conversion into the spectral color space. And then here we've got the spectral observer. We've only got two options, CIE 1931 and CIE 1964. Now these spectral observers are the two color spaces. There's the 1931 color space and the 1964 color spaces. Now it does get all technical when you go on to Google and you type it in. There's all sorts of mathematical equations regarding this. However, CIE 1931 is like the standard observer, was like the first one that was created. And then CIE 1964 is the more modern one, which is more advanced. So it has a higher color space range than compared to the 1931 color space. So that's what we've got there. So the best way to show you the difference is I'm going to show you a renders that I did using both of these options. So let me go and show you that right now, which is this one here. So here we have a scene with a point light on the top right here, and I've rendered it using the faithful CIE 1931 setting, faithful CIE 1964 setting, natural CIE 1931 and natural CIE 1964. So you can see the differences here with the faithful and the natural settings here. You can see with a point light, with a scene light that's a point light, how it affects everything in terms of the rendering here. The one I use is this one here, faithful CIE 1964. I feel that gives me the best color in terms of when I'm creating my renders, because I use a lot of scene lights. So I feel like that gives me the best results. Now you may prefer the natural version, or you may prefer this one here, or you may even prefer this one here. That's absolutely fine. There is no right or wrong. It is what you like, because art is subjective. Whatever spectral rendering settings you want to use for your scene, that's absolutely fine. You pick what works best for your scene. Again, it all requires experimentation. You've got to experiment with that and figure out what you like and then stick with it. Absolutely fine. So this is what you would get if you were using a point light inside, a scene light inside Daz Studio. These are the kind of settings. So like I said, I prefer this one because I feel like the blue here is a bit more pronounced in this setting here. The blue is got a lot more color to it, whereas this is slightly faded here. And then you've got the blue here. If you look at the blue here, the contrast here between that and that, there is a subtle difference. It's very subtle, but it is there. So that's Daz Studio 4.15. But what about Daz Studio 4.21, the latest version? So inside here, the 4.21, which is the public build, this is the same settings you have now inside the latest version of Daz Studio. Getting a bit more complicated now. Now we've got an extra option inside Spectral Rendering, which is a spectral conversion color space. When we click on this, we get a whole heap of options. We got all these options: XYZ, Rec 709, Rec 2020, ACES and ACES CG. And we've also got faithful, natural, and then we've also got the two color spaces here. So getting a bit more complicated, but it's not as complicated as you might think as I go on to explain here. So to explain this, I'm going to go to a diagram that's going to explain this a lot more better than I can, because pictures speak more than words do. So let's go to this diagram here. So what this diagram here shows is the CIE 1931 color space, which is all this here. This is the 1931 color space. That is the color space here for the spectral observer here. And then what this triangle here shows is the Rec 709 spectral color conversion space. So what basically Daz Studio is doing, it's saying, okay, inside this color space, the CIE 1931 color space, all this color space here, Rec 709 will only use this portion of that color space. Anything outside of that color space, it's going to disregard. Anything inside this color space, it will capture. That's what that is. So that's what that extra control does. So this is what this extra control does here. So now it's giving us even more control in terms of what we want to use, in what particular part of that color space we want to use for these spectral observers. And again, we've got these here as well, the natural and faithful algorithms that are going to be doing that conversion for us between the RGB and the color space. So that's what they're going to be doing there. So Again, the best way to show you is through pictures. Let me show you some renders that I've done earlier and you can see the differences here. What we have here is the renders that I've created using the same settings that I had for Daz Studio 4.15 spectral rendering there. And all I've done is done it for each of them. So I've done it for each of the color conversion spaces. I've done it for each of the spectral intents and each of the observers. So this one here is all of the CIE 1931 faithful. And these are all the different conversion color spaces: XYZ, Rec 709, Rec 2020, ACES, and then ACES CG. So you can see the clear distinction here of how that works now in terms of the color spaces. You can see how everything looks as well. So I'm not too sure why XYZ is like that at the moment. I believe it's something to do with the colors. You have to change certain things. So I'm not too aware of that. If you know more about the XYZ color conversion space, comment down below, share your knowledge. That's how we learn. That's how we get better. That's how we improve. That's what this channel is all about. So that's what the 1931 looks like. This is the 1964 of the faithful here, very briefly. Again, link in the description down below for all of these images so you can clearly see yourself how each one looks. And then you can choose the one that you feel is the best for you. And then now we're going to move on to natural 1931. And then here, the next one is natural 64. Now, what you'll notice is, what I would like you to do is to look at this one here. So Rec 709, look at the blue clothing here. Look at the clothing here. Look, as I go through these, you'll notice these will change here. The color of that blue will change. The brightness of that color will change. The hue, the saturation will change as well. So this is 1931. Keep focused on this. I'm going to go and change it to CIE 1964. Do you notice there how it's changed a little bit there? The color there has changed. So 31, slightly different kind of blue color there. And then you've got a different color blue there for 1964. And then for natural, different kind of blue here for natural 1931. And then here, 1964 natural here as well. Notice the difference here. So again, there is a difference in terms of what that color space is. 1931, 1964, the range of colors you're getting with those different. So there is a difference between 1931 color space and 1964. Up to you to decide which one it is. Now from my testing, what I found that this Rec 709 is the conversion color space that Daz Studio was doing in the older version. So 4.15, 4.16. That's the color space it was using when we didn't have the option. Now you got the option inside Daz Studio to control what color space you want to use when you're doing the conversion. So there's a lot of information regarding lighting. Like I said, lighting is very, very important. It's going to significantly improve your renders, which is why I spent a very long time on the tutorial going through each of the individual options inside Daz Studio that will contribute to making your scenes even better regarding lighting. So in next week's video, I'm going to use this, what we've learned here in this lighting portion of the framework, and apply it to part 2. So that image that I created in part 2, where I've done the positioning of my character and everything, I've positioned my characters, everything where I want to now, the camera and everything's all positioned. Now I'm going to apply the lighting to apply to my scene, how I want my scene to look. So I'm going to go through that process with you. Hopefully you'll join me for that one next week. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any more great videos that are going to help you on your journey with Daz Studio. And don't forget to leave a comment down below as well. If I missed anything, if you want to recorrect me anything, always open to learning. That's absolutely amazing. Leave a comment down below. And until that next video, always be learning.